So this is the second video in the unit circle series, and the first video I really covered first how to find the angles and second how to compute the sine and cosine for any given unit circle angle. In this video I want to talk about now, so how do we deal with the other four? How do we get secant, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent? And the deal with all four of these is effectively that there's an identity that you can use to find them. So for instance, oops, I didn't want to use red. Let's see here. The secant of any angle is always equal to 1 over the cosine of that angle, right? The cosecant of any angle is equal to 1 over the sine of that angle. The tangent of any angle is equal to the sine of the angle over the cosine of the angle. And finally, the cotangent of an angle is the cosine of the angle over the sine of the angle. So if you followed the first video and you learned and understood how to find sine and cosine, we should now be able to go back and find secant, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent for any angle because all of them are simply related to the sine and cosine values. So in this video, I'm really intending to just go through a few example calculations of these. So for instance, what if you were asked to find the secant of, let's see here, what do we want to do? Let's do 7 pi over 6, right? So just like I mentioned in the first video, I really feel like step 1 is for us to find the angle. Find the angle. And what I mean by that is, at very least mentally consider the unit circle and identify where is the angle of 7 pi over 6, right? So I think of 7 pi over 6 and I see that as 7/6 pi. And for as much as I really don't like mixed numbers, we can look at this as 1 and 1/6 pi. In other words, you're going to go all the way around to pi and then you're going to go 1/6 more. So we're at sort of the first value here. Right? So then step 2 was, I think, to draw the triangle. I'm not sure. I don't remember from the other video. The steps to me kind of all blend together. So from here, you go up to the x-axis. We draw up to the origin, and we've got sort of this right angle here. Right? Step 3, or maybe it was step 2, I don't remember, was that we basically needed to choose the side or the ratio that we need. So for instance, in this problem, finding the secant of 7 pi over 6 means that I need to do 1 over the cosine of 7 pi over 6. And I'm just using those identities I mentioned earlier, right? So in this case, I need to figure out what the cosine of 7 pi over 6 is. Well, from the previous video, we remember learning that cosine is the x-coordinate. So the x-coordinate here is this thing here. And remember, there were only 5 choices. It was 0, a half, root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, or 1. Right? Again, this is clearly not 1 or 0. So we're going with one of the 3 values in between. And in particular, it's the largest of the 3 values. So we know that, I'm running out of space here, we know the secant of 7 pi over 6 will be 1 over this x value, which we decided was the square root of 3 over 2. But actually, because this is a negative or a backwards x value, this will actually be negative root 3 over 2. And that can be simplified just by multiplying top and bottom by the reciprocal of this thing. I could end up getting negative 2 over root 3. Or if you or your teacher prefers that you rationalize the denominator, you could multiply top and bottom by root 3 to get negative 2 root 3 all over 3. Either one of these two answers is good by me. Those are both fine. So that's an example of secant. The cosecant ones are very similar. The only difference is that you're working with the y-coordinate instead. I don't know that I'll go through one of those. I don't want this video to be as long as the previous one was. Let's take a look at a tangent value. Right? What if you were asked for the tangent of negative pi over 3? And I just realized in that first video that I didn't cover negative angles, and I should have. So we'll cover it here. Just like before, we start with step 1 by visualizing the angle. Right? So what does this mean? just means instead of going this way around the circle, we're going to go backward around the circle, right? So again, if that's pi, and I want pi over 3, imagine cutting that into 3 pieces. This would be 1, this would be 2, this would be 3, right? So if I want 1 pi over 3, negative 1 pi over 3, I'm looking at this value here, right? This is negative pi over 3. From there, I draw up to the x-axis and to the origin, and that gives me my right triangle, right? From there, we use an identity to put this back in terms of sine and cosine. So tangent, it so happens, is sine over cosine. So that's the sine of negative pi over 3 over the cosine of negative pi over 3. Great. So from the first video, this just means that I need to look at the y-coordinate over the x-coordinate of the point that I just found, right? So for this guy here, this y-coordinate seems to be the larger, the longer value. So that's going to be root 3 over 2. And because it's downward, it's negative root 3 over 2 over. And the x value is actually the small one. And by the way, the small value always goes with the large value, or the large goes with the small, or the medium values go together. At any rate, we had negative root 3 over 2 here. This is the small value, so that's positive 1/2. If I then multiply top and bottom of this thing by 2, you'll have a sort of a 2 cancellation party. And when all is said and done, all that's left is negative root 3. And that is the tangent of negative pi over 3, right? I'll go ahead and put one more up here just so that you can try it on your own. So let's take a look at that one next. So what about the cotangent of pi? Let's do that one. What's the cotangent of pi? So again, if you're watching this at home, try it on your own. So you should have either drawn or visualized a unit circle. You should then have figured out that pi is this value over here. This is pi. From there, we try and draw a triangle. From that point, I draw down to the x-axis. I'm already there. There isn't really a triangle to be drawn here. But that's okay. We've identified that that's where we are. Then we remember cotangent is the cosine of the angle over the sine of the angle. Right? Remembering then that cosine is always the x-coordinate, sine is the y-coordinate. So from there, I go back to my picture and I think about, okay, for this value that's over here, what is my x value? The x value from the origin is negative 1. What about the y value? Well, that point is not up off of the x-axis. It's right there, so it has a y-coordinate of 0. Negative 1 over 0 is undefined, so the cotangent of pi is undefined. Right? And that's sort of the walkthrough of how you use the unit circle to now find values of secant, cosecant, cotangent, secant, cosecant, cotangent, and tangent. I think that was the one I missed. So hopefully that made sense. And I will see you in the next video, which is probably going to be about inverse trig functions, which is a good time.